Chapter 20. He guided her towards a lightly forested area. The ground was covered in mossy earth, interspersed with fallen branches and delicate clusters of tiny mushrooms. As they approached, a familiar black structure emerged smoothly from the ground, leaving the plants and moss completely undisturbed. They stepped inside, and the lift began a gentle descent. After a short journey downwards, the door opened onto a plain-looking hallway that bathed in bright white light. They walked quietly to a door at the end, which slid open silently, welcoming them into a spacious chamber crowned by a dome-shaped ceiling. The room was large enough to lend each sound an echo. Its walls were intricately covered with complex, non-repeating patterns and scripts she could not immediately recognize. At the room's center stood a simple pedestal. On that pedestal rested a plain-looking rock, partially embedded with small metallic fragments. Oldest stepped towards it, eyes thoughtful. "That is the most valuable object I have encountered in all my years," he said softly, lifting the protective cover. He picked up the stone and briefly examined it, then casually tossed it to her. She caught it reflexively, feeling a panicked moment at the casual ease with which he'd thrown her an object he considered more valuable than all the treasures she had seen in the museum above. Once she was sure it was safe in her hands, she relaxed enough to examine it closely. It appeared rather ordinary, a simple chunk of rock, somewhat metallic, not unlike common fragments she had encountered before. After a moment of inspection, she finally asked, "What makes it so valuable?" "That thing is older than time itself," he said in a contemplative tone. She stood quietly, puzzling over this strange statement, but couldn't unravel the meaning. Older than time? What does that even mean? He pointed to a section on the wall. Following his gesture, she recognized the logo that had been on the back of the tablet. "The second oldest human being after myself acquired it a long time ago," he explained. He believed that this rock came from the very first star to explode, at the dawn of the universe. He then took a step, tracing his finger along an area filled with scribbles of math and diagrams that covered the wall from top to bottom. "We ran it through many tests and compared the results with other rocks from that early period. There was something different in this rock. It confounded us all until someone came up with a radical idea that maybe this object was significantly older than other rocks. The implication being that it had been formed before the universe had the capacity to create heavier atoms." As he spoke, Oldest moved along the wall, gesturing towards various notes and formulas inscribed there. "We called in some trusted experts, foremost in their field, and we theorized about what it all meant, how we could prove or disprove the hypothesis that we were playing with. We had to invent a new way of thinking about time and matter in order to break through and prove our theory." He stopped here, looking over at her as he returned the object to the pedestal. "Can you guess at the implications of that object?" he asked her. She hesitated, still contemplating what he was telling her. "It means that there was something existing before the universe?" "Precisely. he said with a slight smile. It suggests that our universe was likely born out of another earlier one, and that matter somehow transferred from the parent universe to ours, the offspring universe. He turned back to the wall, gesturing at another set of diagrams. After that, our attention turned to the how of it all. How exactly does a universe come into existence? There were plenty of theories, but none of them fit. So we kept working, fitting this puzzle together bit by bit, alongside our other projects. Eventually, we developed a theory. Under certain conditions, when a sun of particular parameters implodes, a new universe is born. He pointed to a diagram that showed what looked like funnels nested within funnels. Try to imagine black holes within black holes, each creating more black holes. Inside every event horizon lies another universe that cannot be detected from the outside. He waved an arm, gesturing at an area further along the wall. Of course, it isn't quite that simple. Crossing from one universe to another isn't straightforward. Apart from the immense tidal forces involved, the physical laws of one universe might differ dramatically from the next. Gravity could be stronger or weaker, or some fundamental constant might vary, producing entirely different realities. He returned to the pedestal and picked up the ancient rock again, turning it thoughtfully in his hands. This fragment tells us something crucial about our parent universe. It likely has very similar physical properties as ours. Although there might be some surprises, we feel it safe to assume that we could survive there, if we could somehow get there. He placed the object back and returned to looking over the diagrams and text. But if our universe emerged out of that other universe, then where did that one come from? She asked, as she was processing all of this, struggling to keep up. Oldest nodded slowly. Exactly. Every answer we find raises even deeper questions. Discovering how our universe began only leads us to the next mystery. How did it all begin? But each step brings us closer. Whether that ultimate answer is accessible, whether we even have the capacity to grasp it, remains to be seen. We paused thoughtfully. For now, though, our attention stays focused, just one layer up or down. Once we felt confident we had the basic formula for creating a universe, we began wrestling with the technical details, figuring out exactly how one might actually bring a universe into existence. She stared at him, worried that either she had lost her mind or Oldest had. This all seemed so far out. At that same time, we were also still working hard on ways to terraform Earth back to health. Yet here we were, simultaneously discussing the realistic possibility of creating entire new universes. Some of my colleagues struggled deeply with this. They questioned why we were spending so much effort repairing one small planet if infinite universes existed. Realities where everything and everyone, every choice we ever regretted, every alternate path was already playing out somewhere else. I found that idea comforting. Many others didn't. Oldest shrugged slightly, looking away. But in the end, none of those hypotheticals really matter. What matters is what we have right here, the reality we can touch and shape, the connections we actually have. So we devised an experiment. We found a suitable star that matched the necessary parameters and began preparations to induce its implosions. She interrupted instinctively. Wait, what? You've been to other star systems? She felt it was critical to confirm this before even beginning to explore the ethics of collapsing stars. Yes, he replied casually, with an amused grin. There are even a few plants up in the dome that were born under entirely different suns. Some of my companions send me such things as gifts once they've established themselves elsewhere. Her imagination spun, picturing worlds orbiting distant suns. How long does it take to travel between the star systems? It varies significantly, he explained patiently. Space isn't as uniform as people often assume. A journey spanning one light year in one direction might take 2 years, while a similar distance in another could take 20. Dimensions of relativity, as an old friend used to say. She struggled to wrap her head around it, resorting to diving onwards with more questions. How can you possibly travel that fast? What kind of propulsion do you use? He turned to fully face her, his expression shifting subtly. A deeper, focused curiosity seemed to emerge behind his eyes, as if he was suddenly reconsidering something important about her. His full attention, previously somewhat distant, now fixed entirely upon her, making her feel both honored and uneasy. Let's get out of here, Oldys said suddenly. She followed him down the hallway to a small room that held a fridge, a sink, a counter lined with various machines, and a simple table at which they sat. A large window looked out at a massive sub-dome area, which housed a city of machines, performing countless tasks. So many moving parts in a ballet of motion. Oldest handed her a cup of tea and gazed thoughtfully out at the machines before looking back to her, the intensity of focus returning. You have a choice to make, he began, pausing to take a sip from his cup. And it's a pretty big one. A little flying drone flew by the window, carrying some completed items, just as Oldest continued. The truth is, if you genuinely want to return to the inner planets and liberate humanity, you will need your own PBAI. I can and will do that for you if you ask it of me. But you should know that afterward, you will never be quite the same again. At heart, you'll still be yourself, but the changes will be profound. He gave her a moment to just stare at him, speechless. She had not imagined he would offer her this. Best you take some time to think about it. How about we? I don't need time, she interrupted. I would like that. A PPAI, that is. You're sure? Asked Oldest with a deliberate emphasis. Once it becomes a part of you, there is no returning to who you were before. Seeing her nod determinedly, she smiled faintly. Anyway, you will have time to think it through. It will take a day to prepare the scanner, and then, after we have a successful scan, a few more days to produce all the necessary parts. He reached behind his back and pulled out a bundle of pages, seemingly out of nowhere. I will give you some information you should look over before you make your final decision on the installment itself. Once you wake up after the operation, you will need some time to get used to the changes, to learn how to live and think anew. What you call reality today will pale in comparison to what you will experience with your PBAI. I understand, she responded, trying to sound confident and failing. She was driven by the same impulse that had carried her from Earth to Saturn to save her friends and apparently liberate humanity. There was no way she was going to refuse this opportunity, no matter the cost. Besides, the prospect of her own inner PBAI was exciting, even if it was also terrifying. Good, then I will come and find you tomorrow when we are ready. He paused, thoughtful, and then added, You'll be the first new addition since Elise. She was the last of the 500 to be augmented some centuries ago. The next morning, after completing her morning routine, she sat down to read through the pages Oldest had given her. They gave some insights into the PBAI technology. It might just as well have said magic, given how little she truly understood. But one particular section caught her attention. It described how, after integrating a PBAI, individuals could start perceiving the world through complex probability models, effectively transforming them into fortune tellers. For some of the 500, this had brought remarkable clarity, expanding their awarenesses and allowing them to understand the deeper impact of their choices. But others had struggled, feeling restricted and robbed of genuine free will as the models became rigid maps of their lives. Life as paint by numbers, as one had put it. She folded the pages and wandered down to a small pond surrounded by tall grass. Sitting on a tiny wooden pier, dipping her toes in the water, she found herself pondering the nature of free will and fate when Oldest came to her late in the afternoon. Are you ready? He asked, and she answered yes. As they walked together towards the scanner, Oldest began to share stories about how life changed for the 500 after receiving their PBAIs. Their sense of time and scale had radically changed, and they could theoretically prolong their life indefinitely, barring accidents or catastrophes like those that had sadly seen their end during the war. His voice was pain speaking of that. All those potentially immortal lights extinguished far too soon. After that, he explained the surviving few had abandoned Earth, venturing out into deep space to visit and inhabit other star systems. The decades, or even centuries, no longer a barrier. We moved Centauri into orbit with Proxima Centauri, and now both are on their way to join our sun, like cosmic cowboys, herding precious stars together. He added, smiling softly at the thought. Yet despite these astonishing revelations, her focus remained inward, gripped by a growing unease about the imminent transformation that she faced. And then we collapsed Alpha Centauri A, he concluded. She barely heard his voice, distant and surreal, as they turned a corner and entered the scanning room. The chamber was dominated by a large dome, taking up nearly half the space. At its base lay a head-shaped hollow, with sturdy straps waiting ominously nearby. You go there, Aldous said gently, gesturing towards the opening. I figured, she replied, her voice smaller than she intended, a thousand conflicting feelings swirling within her. She searched desperately for a reason to hesitate. Is it dangerous? Yes, Oldest answered plainly, though not without compassion. Very dangerous. If you don't know what you're doing. He paused, and then added softly, almost to himself, "It's been centuries since I last performed this procedure." His unfinished sentence hung in the air, thickening her anxiety rather than easing it. The weight of the decision pressed upon her, and for an instant she considered stepping away. She glanced at Oldest, hoping for reassurance, but found instead a calm expectation, as if he was carefully observing what choice she would make on her own. Summoning every ounce of determination she had, she approached the scanner. As she placed her head into the hollow, a strange silence filled the room. She could hear the quiet pulse of her own heartbeat, feel the cold edge of uncertainty tightening around her chest. The apparatus came alive. An appendage unfolded from somewhere deep within the massive machine, and gently, yet firmly, enveloped her head. She felt a subtle pressure, like a comforting hand resting lightly upon her forehead, steadying her even as it bound her. She blinked rapidly, determined to hold herself together. She would not flounder now. She had traveled too far, risked too much to turn back from her destiny. "Breathe," came Oldest's voice, reassuring and kind. "The universe is about to open itself to you." She took one final deep breath, closed her eyes, and surrendered herself fully to what came next. She felt a sudden, strange, tingling sensation, followed quickly by an intense feeling of freefall. Every muscle in her body contracted simultaneously in a burst of involuntary action, and then nothing. Darkness, complete and total, enveloped her for a fraction of a heartbeat before reality shifted again. She opened her inner eyes to a kaleidoscopic realm filled with endless fractal patterns, blossoming and collapsing into each other, colors and shapes spiraling infinitely around her. She felt herself rising, transcending layers of perception into an elevated state of consciousness, ascending towards something vast, yet infinitely familiar. And there, waiting quietly at the pinnacle, she met herself, her subconscious self, calm and knowing, watched her arrival without surprise. A silent communication passed between them, beyond words or language, a profound understanding, deep as memory and vivid as dreams. And just as swiftly, she felt herself slipping back, falling once more, descending through the infinite layers until she landed softly, safely, within the boundaries of her physical body. The scanner gently released its grip, leaving her dazed and blinking as the room returned to focus. "Most people have a vivid trip when the corpus callosum is scanned," Oldest said quietly, observing her carefully. "Did you experience anything?" She nodded, slowly, trying to hold on to that elusive image even as they faded, like a dream upon waking. With difficulty, she described the fractals, the sensation of ascension, and the brief encounter with her deeper self. He listened patiently, a subtle smile forming as though he understood precisely what she meant. All right, he said, voice gentle but practical. That was it. Your implants are now being fabricated. I have some preparations of my own to make. I'll come and find you in 2, maybe 3 days. He tilted his head slightly, awaiting confirmation. She managed to smile, still slightly dazed, and nodded. Oldest gave her a reassuring nod in return and quietly left the room, leaving her alone with the echoes of her experience. She didn't recall walking back, but when she woke up the next morning, she was in her bed. She felt drained, yet strangely refreshed. As she got up, uncertainty crept into her mind. Had meeting Oldest just been a vivid, elaborate dream? The memories were so surreal. She stepped outside, taking a moment to attend to her senses, listening to the birds calling on the pond, the gentle lapping of the water, and the rustle of leaves in the breeze. She inhaled deeply, savoring the scent of damp earth and cool air, and wiggled her toes, enjoying the texture of sand and grass beneath her feet. Feeling inspired, she asked the little bot for art supplies, and a few minutes later, a four-winged drone arrived, bearing everything she needed. She began painting, capturing the serene view, a memory of the moment tied to the image. As evening approached on the second day from the scan, she ordered a lavish 7-course meal she had once had on a special occasion as a child. My last meal, she mused softly. Time crawled by. It had been 4 days since the scan, and still no sign of Oldest. She was starting to worry that something had happened, that he would not come. Then she reminded herself, yet again, not to listen to that inner panic voice, and settled down on the porch of her hut of residence to distract herself with tales of the past. The dome's lights were already dimming when he came, walking calmly past the pond, with a large box trotting after him on many tiny, determined robotic legs. It had an oddly biological gait that really gave the sense of a personality. It seemed to be enjoying trotting over the hills to where she waited. "You ready?" he asked as he stepped up on the porch next to her. "Hell yeah," she said, finding reassurance in her own voice. She stood, ready to go, but Oldest signaled her to remain seated. "Just sit back and relax," he said. "It knows what it's doing." She eased herself back down, realizing that the procedure would take place here and not in some white lab room. She was glad to have chosen this serene place for her transformation. Oldest took a seat facing the pond, making himself comfortable. He gazed thoughtfully out at the water, his fingers occasionally twitching, as though working through unseen calculations, or perhaps just in silent meditation. The chest approached, positioning itself to her side. It opened silently, and from within emerged two segmented shapes resembling giant centipedes, crawling steadily towards her. This might have been terrifying. However, they approached with an air of polite confidence that set her at ease, even as they climbed onto her body, aligning themselves from her head down to her lower back. She felt a sharp sting pierce the skin in the back of her head, then another sting and another, running swiftly down her spine. Fear flooded her mind even as she tried to remain calm, quickly spiraling into absolute terror when she realized that she was utterly paralyzed. Her fight or flight instinct screamed silently, unable to act, helpless. Then, in an instant, physical world vanished. She was back in the realm of shifting fractals and endless geometric forms. Her subconscious and conscious mind there together, waiting for something. Then something new emerged. A presence, vibrant with life, radiating gratitude and deep love as it gently merged into her being. Within moments, it felt as if it had always been part of her, like a muscle she only just discovered she had. When she returned to herself, everything was different. Her senses were heightened, sharpened, ultra high definition. Her ability to interpret and process her surroundings expanded dramatically. The faintest curiosity, what is that smell? Bloomed into a flood of information, effortlessly categorizing, analyzing, and revealing everything she could possibly want to know. She was struck by lightning insight. Where before her mind had been like a small, oil-fueled lamp illuminating one thought at a time, now it was a floodlight, instantly lighting up vast cities of thought and possibilities. She allowed herself to explore this incredible new landscape, her inner world laid out before her. When she wondered what exactly had happened to her, immediately streams of information clarified that the hardware now implanted would gradually become fully integrated with her biology. Nanoscopic robots circulated through her bloodstreams, enhancing her body's processes, pushing its limits to extraordinary new heights. Fine wires intertwined with her nervous system, boosting speed, precision, and control. Her mind had many new dimensions that felt as if they were her and also strangely external, like a new layer between her conscious thoughts and the subconscious instincts. Looking around her, she saw and heard and felt information pouring out of everywhere. Everything spoke to her at once. She was feeling overwhelmed, and it was turning quickly into panic. Then she felt a presence, a request to connect. She looked in the direction it came from and saw Oldest looking back at her with humorous empathy. She accepted his request, and he enfolded into her consciousness. What you are feeling will soon pass. The words came to her without his lips moving. His voice resonated in her mind as if she was recalling a memory. In a few days, you will get tired as your old self learns how to work with the new. Don't overthink or try to grasp it all. Relax, breathe, and let it flow through you. Then Oldest stood up and strode over to her. You're going to be all right, he said out loud. For now, the main thing is that you take it easy. Get some rest and practice in small steps. It's like learning how to use a new muscle. Just play around and try not to get ahead of yourself. She liked the analogy of discovering a new muscle, and it helped calm her. Rather than trying to follow everything, she allowed her attention to drift, noticing how thoughts responded instantly to her focus. When she emptied her mind, things slowed. When she wondered about something, streams of insight appeared. Her mind felt limitless, exploring freely. It felt like hours, yet when she looked, only a few minutes had passed. Our perception of time depends on our experiences, Oldest commented aloud as if reading her mind. More happening, more time passing. Can you hear my thoughts? She wondered. He smiled warmly and wordlessly projected, Yes, and once you have settled into yourself, I will show you how. But for now, you have enough with just your own thoughts in your head. He smiled at her, stood up, and offered her a hand. You should get some rest now, and for the next few days. I will come back once you are ready. She realized she did feel exhausted. Stumbling over to her bed, she was out before Oldest was even out of the lakeside cabin. The next few days passed by in a blur. She stayed in bed most of the time, leaving only to eat and sit on the patio for a few moments, testing herself before returning to rest again. She had never been so tired in her life. The third day, she was already feeling more energetic and in control. She was slowly learning to keep her concentration on the simpler side, not following every thread off to infinity, not getting overwhelmed by the vast ocean of information surrounding her. On the fourth day, Oldest turned up wearing a black wetsuit, carrying a spear. Before she could ask, he tossed her the suit and said, Surf's up. I set the waves off the coast to a perfect beginner spread. Let's go catch a few. And gave her a smile that left no option other than to put on the suit and follow him out. They walked towards the inland sea. Saturn was not visible in the sky. However, 3 of its moons were. Information about them all threatened to flow over her, but she held it off, choosing to be present in this moment, going surfing with a 1,000-year-old dude in an orbiting space station the size of Iceland. Don't get more cool than this, she whispered to herself, smiling from ear to ear.